Hi and welcome to the RedLore Material Tracking Podcast. In this podcast, we are interviewing thought leaders in the field of material tracking. Each monthly episode focuses on a specific topic within the domain of the thought leader, who is interviewed by our CEO Nick van der Donk. Topics vary from automatic tracking of materials in the factory to tracking reusable containers across the supply chain, to guarding the chain of custody of sensitive goods, and much more. Here at RedLore, these topics are at the heart of what we do, helping our customers boost their productivity. Let's dive right into this episode.
Welcome to the fourth episode of our podcast on materials tracking. Today, we'll be delving into the technology that underlies the on-site, in-the-facility tracking of materials. The technology is known as Real-Time Location System, or RTLS, and we'll be using the term RTLS to refer to this technology all through this episode. And after that, we'll be looking at the business side of RTLS. Where is it being adopted and where is it yet to be adopted? The industry we'll be using as a red thread through the discussion will be manufacturing and warehousing. Our guest today is Janne Kilpua, a researcher and expert on the topic of RTLS. We're honored to have him at our virtual interview table today. Janne, could you introduce yourself and guide us through your curriculum and how you came to be an authority in this field?
Sure, and thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be here. So my name is Janne Kilpua. Currently, I'm a doctoral researcher here in Finland, basically in Aalto University in Helsinki, and I have my own business also doing the logistics consultancy. So I have been working 20 years in the different position in the logistics and supply chain. And I would say about 15 years ago, I had an opportunity to lead a really major project in Finland. So basically, I was working with this distributor with 3 automated warehouses, and I was leading the project for the warehouse management system. So that was really the first time to get exposed to these, let's say, digital solution and the automation also. So basically, this distribution center was really effective in that sense. So maybe 15 years ago, I got really excited about the topic and the digitalization. And after that, I have been working in several companies trying to really drive the change towards the digitalization. But let's say I have not been able to, let's say, achieve the kind of changes or improvements that I was seeking. So I decided some years ago I decided to maybe I have to do something about it, and I started then my own business, and I also started as a researcher in the doctoral program. So basically, last years I have been studying and learning this real-time location system and really get to know the businesses which are using these applications. And I have been really specializing that what is really the thing in the RTLS, that why are the companies using it or why the companies should use it. So I have been really focusing on that in the, let's say, mainly in the manufacturing and the logistics sector.
Understood. Thank you. And before we get going, let's define what we're talking about when we use the term RTLS. When we at RedLore talk to customers, we often find that the term real-time location system can be misleading. Could you define for us what a modern RTLS represents?
Yeah, I think that's that's really a good question, and I would maybe start from the, let's say, the evolution also. If we start from the, for example, from the indoor location, coming to the indoor positioning, coming to the indoor navigation, coming to the indoor positioning system, and then going to the real-time location system. So I think there are already quite many steps taken in this RTLS, I would say. So basically, RTLS is the system which automatically identifies and tracks assets. And these assets are typically object or persons, basically. And we can see what's happening there in the real time in certain space, basically. And typically, we have different technologies which you can use in the RTLS. I would say that the most typical ones are the ultra-wideband, then we have the Wi-Fi, then we have Bluetooth Low Energy. So I would say, of course, there's a lot of other technologies also, but maybe those are the most common ones. And I think that's really a good question. And some years ago, I also started to really ponder what is really the RTLS. And I think that the RTLS providers have been too humble in marketing, because what you see today in the real-time location system applications is that it's doing much more. So if we are talking about for example, the telematics on the field, that we are able to get the temperatures or the humidity of the products, we can see the speed or accelerations of the material handling equipment. We can basically see a different statuses of the fleet or assets. So I would say that it's not only about the location nowadays what we see. I think it's much more than the real-time location system. I'm not wise enough to tell you that what is the correct term currently. I would say that maybe it would be better to use this kind of real-time control system or real-time monitoring system, because it's not only about the location, it's much more. It's really many telematics information we can get from the field and combine this to the location information. So I think it's much more than location information currently.
So that's interesting. What you're saying, if I'm understanding you, is that we're using the term real-time location system, but it's much more than location, is what you're saying. You're saying it's not just where it is, it's how has it moved from A to B, the path. But in addition to that, you added the telemetry side to it, where you're measuring temperature, humidity, and other things. And the last thing you said, it's about monitoring. It's about having that real-time monitoring and control over your operations. What are the benefits of this modern RTLS, the RTLS in the way that you defined it, with all the telemetry on top of it? What are the benefits in manufacturing and warehousing?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and maybe we should start really that what is really the problem in the field, basically. So I've seen many cases, for example, that I know that people are talking about these digital topics, digital twins, metaverse, industrial 4.0, now even 5.0, and I think sometimes the basics are really missing, or the foundation. A good example is that really people do not find the items or the materials in their sites. That really means that the raw materials or components or final products, they are really lost. Some years ago, I visited Germany in this one site, and even these really big final products were missing. They were lost, and they cost like several thousands. So in that sense, if you don't find those, you have to really make new ones, and that's really time consuming, and also you have to really put a lot of extra money on that. So I think that one of the biggest issues that things are lost in many sites, and I think this is also a problem in other other industries also. For example, I think the healthcare sector is something that is really using a lot of this RTLS, and they have these kind of, let's say, common assets. For example, these kind of ultrasound machines or some kind of common assets which they share between a group of people, and you really need to know where the machine is, so you don't have to just waste time and try to find it. So I think that is one of the big issues what we can solve with the RTLS. And maybe another example would be the utilization of the fleet. So that is something that I have seen in many sites. I visited another site in Germany, and I calculated that they had 112 forklifts in this one site, and I bet that they are not using them all, but I don't have any data to prove that. And if you really think about this topic, for example, that you are leasing these forklifts or material handling equipment, and the cost is like several hundreds a month, and that's like several thousands of annually, basically. And if you have like 10 or 20 additional forklifts that you wouldn't need, that's like a tens of thousands a year, even 100,000 a year savings, which you could benefit or which you could really achieve. But if you don't have the data to show that you don't need these forklifts, for example, so you can't do a lot in that sense. And that's what I've seen in many sites, for example, that what is really the utilization, we cannot tell. People just know that, okay, we are not using them all, but we don't have any data to prove that.
Those are a couple of really interesting examples. I'd like to expand on the first one, where you said we can't find our things in warehousing and manufacturing. And in my previous life before founding RedLore, I was running a tier 2 car manufacturing organization. We had that all the time. We had thousands of pallets with goods in our facility, and it's hard to know where every pallet is, because 99% of the time it is where you expect it to be, where your standard operating procedures tell you to put it. But then in 1% of the cases, it's not. And that's where it's time consuming to find it. But it's not just a time consumed, it's about the operation standing still while you're looking for it. And in a few cases, it even escalated where we weren't able to deliver in time to a customer because we hadn't found the goods in time. So yeah, I think this is really a big value driver of RTLS. I totally have seen that in practice. And then the other thing I just like to repeat of what you said is, you said we need to be able to prove where the inefficiencies are, that forklift fleet that may be too big, identify where the inefficiencies are by collecting the data first. And you're saying that's where the RTLS kicks in. One other thing I wanted to ask you is, RedLore, almost on where RTLS is our bread and butter, it's our core activity. Almost on a weekly basis, we receive questions from potential customers about RFID and why RFID cannot solve the use case they're after. Why do they need an RTLS for that? Why can't they just use RFID? And in the best of cases, this organization, this corporation has just started their discovery stage, and we have time. We're in time to explain to them how RFID and RTLS are really different technologies for different applications. But sometimes they come to us after they've concluded a pilot project with RFID that has failed to deliver the desired results because it was a mismatch. Could you clarify what the differences are between RFID on the one hand and RTLS on the other hand, and how those differences translate into different use cases and different business benefits?
Yeah, sure. I think that's really a good question. If you are thinking about the RFID, I think the name tells a lot. That's really a identification for identification, basically. So that's a radio frequency identification. So it automatically identifies objects, so to say. So in that sense, you couldn't actually use it for the real-time location system as a sole only system, basically. And that also comes from the technology, because when you are reading these or let's say scanning these RFIDs, the distance is typically from centimeters to couple of meters. So you have some technical restraints also if you want to do the RTLS with that. So it's not fit to the RTLS, but however, if you are combining, for example, ultra wideband and RFID to make a joint RTLS, that's a different story, and actually that makes a sense in a lot of the cases. For example, in some of the warehouses, we might have thousands or tens of thousands of pallets, for example, which we want to track. So in those cases, actually it might make sense to use RFID, basically RFID stickers in the pallets. And when you have a forklift, which is in the RTLS system, for example, in the ultra-wideband technology, so you are having a forklift with the RTLS, and then when it goes and pick the pallet with the RFID, it scans the RFID, and then you can pair those. And when you are pairing this, so you can then see whether when the material is going, because the forklift is followed by the RTLS. But you cannot do that with only RFID stickers and the technology, basically. So you need some other technology for the RTLS purposes.
Okay, let's delve a bit deeper in that. Why couldn't you do it just with RFID stickers? Why do you need the RTLS UWB RTLS component in addition to purely using the RFID stickers?
Yeah, we can also think about this in practice. For example, if you are talking about passive RFID solutions, so we can scan that sticker from the distance of centimeters to the couple of meters. So basically, you would need these scanners every other 2 meters or so. So that doesn't make any sense because you don't have the distance to do that. Of course, you have this kind of active RFID where the distance is a bit longer, but it just doesn't make any sense to have these kind of readers between some meters. But of course, you can have these how RFID is typically used, that you have these kind of ports, for example, that if you go through it, if it scans the RFID stickers, and you can then see the location at that time, but you don't know what's happening after that or before that. So basically, the RFID is quite good for the identification and for the purposes, for example, that you can see that if the product is on the building or in some location, but if it's moving, it doesn't make sense to then follow that with the RFID.
Gotcha. So what I'm understanding is that with RFID, if you'd have a system that only uses RFID, and you still want to know where everything is all the time, you would need a reader every couple of meters, which is obviously not practical and not economically feasible. Let's now turn the equation upside down. How about doing it only with UWB RTLS, for example? Why is that not the best solution?
Well, I don't see any problem to do that with, for example, solely with the UVB, ultra-wideband, basically. So you just need to tag the pallets, and you just need one technology, and you are ready to go. You're good to go, basically. So you don't need any additional technology in that sense.
And in the beginning, you said that there is an opportunity to combine the two technologies, the RFID label on the goods, on the pallet, and then UWB RTLS on the forklift. What is the big advantage of this hybrid RFID RTLS solution?
Yeah, I think just thinking about costs. What is the cost for the system? So, for example, we have some kind of big warehouse with, let's say, 1,000 pallets. So if you want to track those only with the UVB, so it's quite expensive to have tags for the 50,000 pallets. So it might make sense to put those just RFID stickers, which are really cheap, and then scan with those with the forklift UVB, basically. So you wouldn't need to put these UVB tags for all of the 50,000 pallets.
Okay, so that's really insightful. The takeaway for me is that in a situation where you have a large amount of assets, like 50,000 pallets that you want to track, you want to have the lowest cost tag for those 50,000 units, which then associates well or is a good fit for RFID. But in order to keep track of where you drop these where you drop them off, in which rack bay you drop off these pallets, you need to have that association at the forklift level, where you read the RFID as soon as you pick up the pallet. You read the RFID label on the pallet, and through UWB on your forklift, you know where you're going to drop off the pallet or where you're going to pick up the next pallet. So that's really, really interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how the industrial manufacturing and warehousing world is going to pick that up. I'd like to shift to another topic, the topic of execution, putting it into operation. Let me ask you a contentious question. Why are some companies hesitating to deploy these solutions if they have all these benefits?
Yeah, let's say I've been wondering the same question, and I have found a couple of topics which might be hindering the case. And I've been saying to myself that it's really hard to sell these RTLS systems. But on the other hand, it's really hard to buy those also. Because, for example, in the warehousing, you should really understand all the warehouse processes, all the KPIs, all your efficiency. You have to really know the insides of the warehousing. And on the other hand, you would really need to know completely what this RTLS is able to do. And for example, in the warehousing purposes, I think the efficiency is something that we can really improve with the RTLS. I have a couple of cases, for example, that if you want to really have these benefits in the warehousing, so I've been telling people that the RTLS is like an X-ray to your operation. So we can really see what's happening in your operations in a new way. We get the information that we didn't have before. So for example, when we have this X-ray, it doesn't have any value in that sense. But when you start really checking what's really happening there, for example, with the RTLS, we can see that where the forklifts are really moving and how they are moving with these heat maps and all the data we are getting. So when analyzing these, we can really start asking these good questions, that why my forklifts are always going to the far locations instead of the near ones, because all the fast runners should be in the nearest locations. So is there something wrong with my put away or picking strategies? What's happening there? And then you can see also with the heat map that where the traffic with the forklift is happening. Is my layout wrong? And what's really happening? So I can really start asking these questions. And in that sense, I think one of the topics which is hindering the RTLs in the warehousing is that it's really hard to get the benefits, in that sense that you need to know, like mentioned, you have to know the warehouse operations and the processes, you have to know the RTLs, and then you have to be able to analyze this, what's happening and what do I need to do. Because after only doing these developments, for example, changing the put away strategies, changing the picking strategy, changing your layout, only after that you are able to really achieve the benefits and the results. So in that sense, you have to really put some effort there. So it's, I would say that it's not only a ready product. You need to do something in order to get the benefits. And sometimes it's really hard for people to understand that, hey, you need to understand these topics, and this is also what I'm trying to explain to people, that how we can really get the benefits. But it's sometimes it's not so easy to understand. And as we are also only speaking about this RTLs, for some people it's really new thing, and it's a bit complicated also in that sense. So we have to do our best to explain that what we are really doing and what are the benefits.
You said it's hard to buy an RTLS because you said you need to understand in great detail how your actual operations work and where their inefficiencies are, because that's only by knowing that you know what the benefits are you're going to reap from RTLS. You also said it's hard to sell as a seller, as a developer seller of RTLS systems at RedLore, and for all our competitors. What do you think we should do different to make it more sellable and to make it easier for the customer to buy, to understand what the benefits are for him?
That's really a good question. And in the beginning, I also mentioned that you guys have been quite humble in marketing the solutions. So I think that is something that you could improve. And really talking to the customers and the people, and I see that really a lot of people are interested in these kind of digital solutions. They are interested in industry 4.0. Now we are going to the 5.0. We are talking about this metaverse. We are talking about smart warehouses. We are talking about the smart factories. They are really interested in putting money and investing in those. But sometimes I feel that they are willing to invest in those, but if you are talking about RTLs, they are not willing to invest in that, even though that is really the foundation for the industry 4.0, for example. So maybe you could add a couple of more topics to your offering and start selling industry 4.0 as a package. Maybe that would help a bit. But basically, I think we have to do better job in explaining that, for example, this RTLS, this is really the foundation for the industry 4.0, or if you want to build a road to the industry 5.0 or metaverse or digital twins, we need some kind of input there. For example, you are not able to create a digital twin if you don't have the input. And the input, for example, we need the real-time information. We need the real-time location information for that in order to build some more sophisticated topics. So I think we all need to do a better job in that.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind for sure, and I hope that the people listening to this podcast who are on the supply side of RTLS will also be able to learn something from it. I'd like to move to yet another topic, the future of RTLS. Manufacturing warehousing is a broad sector. It encompasses many, many industries. Can you give us a peek in your crystal ball and tell us which industries you see adopting RTLS earlier than others? Who are the first targets for companies such as RedLore? Who's going to benefit first and more than others?
Yeah, of course, that's a good question. I see these deployments more and more, these deployments also here in Finland, basically. So I think if you're talking about drivers or the market or our customers, the final customers, what's happening there? The demands are getting higher and higher. We need more and more information. We need more real-time information. And for example, in the context of the RTLS, for example, in the warehousing and manufacturing, I see this kind of need for the real-time management system. I think that is something that there is not yet that kind of a solution. If we try to see that what's happening in the next years, I see that there will be more and more these kind of, let's say, extended real-time location systems. Okay, we have these more telematics there, but also something related to the management system that we can really manage the operations, for example. I tried my best to explain this, but for example, if we think about this kind of journey towards the real-time management system, I think now there are like three players. We have the RTLS providers like you. You are bringing this RTLS system and actually more information than the RTLS system. You are bringing this to the sites from the top-down perspective, I would say. And now we are seeing more and more this kind of smart material handling equipment. For example, this good example is the Kiva system, now Amazon Robotics, for example, this kind of robotic mobile fulfillment, what they are doing. And then we are seeing these kind of modern forklifts with the really smart capabilities. And then we have this kind of collaborative AMRs or autonomous mobile robots. So those are now coming from the bottom up. And actually, if you think about these kind of systems, they already do the RTLS, but that's a kind of specific and the decentralized system. So they are using the RTLS already in their own fleet, how to optimize and operate in the warehouses, for example. So they have really good capabilities to even expand this, but they would need more perspective in order to have a bigger scope for the system. And then in the middle, I think we have these software players, for example, warehouse management systems. They would also need this kind of real-time information for their systems in order to really optimize the operations. For example, I see that these kind of responsive operations are coming to the field. For example, that you need the real-time information. If I'm driving a forklift, and I'm doing a put away for one pallet, the system could tell me instantly that, hey, there's a pallet going to the warehouse right next to you. Why don't you take that one when you are there? But in order to give this kind of order, you need the real-time information, what's happening on the field. So I would say that the warehouse management system are really interested in these also. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of cooperations or acquisition between the warehouse management system players and maybe the RTLS providers also. So I would like to see some kind of new systems on the field. Maybe it is the kind of the real-time management system or something else. But at least I see that there's a need for the system which really operates in the real time.
Gotcha. So you're advocating or you're projecting a future where RTLS providers such as RedLore will partner with real-time management system providers, software providers like warehouse management system companies. It's going to be an interesting journey to get there. One final question. Today, at least from a RedLore perspective, RTLS is past the initial proof of technology and has been past that point since a few years, say 2020. But we're still far away from a situation where everyone is using it everywhere, everyone knows about it, and it's just a staple in our manufacturing operations. We're not there yet. When do you think, can you give us a year where you think RTLS will be as widespread as, for example, smartphones?
In the industry, I think many of the reference cases like the automation in warehouse, I think it's all about the references. When people see more and more these kind of RTLS solutions really working and they are bringing benefits to the customers, I think after that we are seeing this kind of tipping point that, hey, now it's really starting to increase. So I see that it's all about the references, and I think that is something that I'm also trying to do, that really increase the knowledge of the RTLS and help companies to really build these kind of systems. So those would be really good examples for others also. And usually when others see that, hey, this company is really benefiting from that, so I think that that is really the point, that this we are starting to see more and more these solutions.
Yeah, and I think we have a joint goal, and the other players in the industry, to continue to educate the end customers, the manufacturers, the warehousers about the benefits. That brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you, Janne, for exploring the exciting world of RTLS with us. It's always refreshing talking to you and getting your insights. Thanks again, and I hope you'll continue to be a positive influencer in this industry. Dear listener, this is the end of this episode. As always, we welcome your comments. Feel free to post them within the platform you're using to listen to this podcast, or just drop us a note at info@redlore.com. We'll also put the contact info to Janne at the bottom of the episode, where you can contact him if you would like to benefit from his knowledge about RTLS and Industry 4.0, 5.0, and digitization. Stay tuned for the next episode coming out next month. We'll be talking about innovation in packaging and how tracking technology can help to make packaging better. Our distinguished guest will be Bianca Robinson. She is the Chief Innovation Officer at the South Africa-based company Alpal. Under her impulse, Alpal won the 2024 Design Innovation Award for Excellence in Reusable Packaging, a great honor and recognition in the sector. Thanks for listening, and have a great rest of your day.
We hope you liked this episode. If you like the podcast content we're bringing, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. At RedLore, we help manufacturing and logistics companies address visibility issues within their material flows and manufacturing processes. Our wireless tags accurately monitor the on-site location of materials as well as their condition, such as temperature deviations and damage. Our solution also tracks the material carries, such as totes and racks, within the manufacturing site and across sites. It replaces time-consuming and error-prone barcode scanning. It brings you real-time location and condition monitoring, which an older technology like RFID cannot do. The end result is that our solution helps our customers avoid line stops, inventory discrepancies, inefficiencies due to human error, and keeps track of the chain of custody. If you'd like to hear more about the topic addressed in this or in previous episodes, just send us an email at info@redlore.com and we'll be in touch. We also love your feedback, so drop us a note with your thoughts.